Hello, everyone. We'll give everyone a couple minutes to join us. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I manage marketing for Satisfied. Welcome to our webinar, Thriving Amidst Industry Challenges, Strategies for Dealership Differentiation and Workforce Excellence, brought to you by Satisfied and Mac. We are thrilled to have you here this morning or this afternoon as we dive into valuable strategies for setting your dealership apart and building a high-performing team. A few housekeeping items while we wait for more people to join. If you're having any technical difficulties, please add those into the chat box. And for questions, please add them to the Q&A section and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Let's get it started with an introduction of our presenters. Emily Spalla from Satisfied has over 15 years of client relations experience in the manufacturing, agriculture, and construction industries. At Satisfied, Emily has created a customer-first environment, leading teams that deliver high-quality solutions that exceed customer expectations. She has worked closely with both enterprise and dealer groups and is passionate about helping them create best practices for CX and EX success. And then joining us from Mac is Russ Green. Russ is an accomplished leader in the agriculture industry with over 45 years of experience. Celebrated for his ability to connect with stakeholders at all levels, named one of Farm Industry News' 10 Fascinating People in Agriculture, he focuses on executive strategy and workforce development. As the founder of McCabe, Russ mentors the next generation of agricultural leaders, emphasizing the importance of preparing for future food production challenges. His expertise lies in strategic development, dealer performance, and leadership coaching. Now that you've heard a bit about our presenters, I'll pass it over to Emily, who will kick things off and guide us through this discussion.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join Russ and I today. We are excited to be here speaking with you maybe on some challenging topics that we have for today's discussion. As Michelle mentioned in the introduction, we're here to talk about thriving amidst some of the industry challenges that we are facing in today's landscape. We're going to talk a little bit about competition and differentiation once we get through a quick little introduction about Satisfied, as well as Russ with Mac and McCabe and Strativation Group. And then we'll kind of go into how can we adapt to these industry changes that we are facing today and what may be coming in the future as well, with the goal in mind of, how can you become the preferred dealer, so the dealer of choice? And that pertains to both as a customer-facing dealer of choice and the employer of choice in your area. As Michelle mentioned, we would love to have some discussion and conversation with you during today's session. And so if you have thoughts or questions that you would like to see addressed or answered, if you could throw those in to that chat section, we can make sure that we address those, and we will be permitting time at the end of today's session. So just a little bit of introductions, as I mentioned about us, starting off with talking about Satisfied. Satisfied has been an industry leading provider for both customer and employee experience to the heavy equipment industry. So we are here supporting dealerships like yourself, as well as maybe potentially your manufacturers. Our goal is to really help you grow your business, right? We want you to try to boost revenue by leveraging feedback that's being provided through our fully integrated services that we offer. We have a couple of those services listed over here on the right-hand side of the screen, where we talk about employee engagement, measuring customer experience, and really helping you take those insights to drive changes and improvements in your business. Our third solution that we focus on by supporting dealerships like yourself is through reputation management, where a lot of feedback is being organically left about your dealership online today. And so our goal is to really help you take a proactive approach to managing that feedback and also leveraging the positive feedback that's being left about you. So I'll hand this over to Russ, who can talk a little bit about his organization for a quick introduction.
Well, thank you, Emily and Michelle. It's a delight to be here. The thing you're constantly known by the company you keep, and keeping company with friends like Satisfied is a Mac behavior. On this slide, you'll see, really four columns or portfolios. I'm coming from Lexington, Kentucky, where I retired from the industry in 2021, and retirement's overrated. So since that time, I've developed the three companies on the left, and have become a member of the Mac group on the right. But McCabe, named after three grandchildren, Mac, Kaylee, and Ben, is a network, kind of a cohort of approximately 20 young people in ag that are going to be the next ag leaders. And we work together on a monthly basis, looking at solving and adjusting to the problems. To the right, and as you can see, that group of McCabe works really with what I call pre-millennials, 26 to 36-year-olds. On the right, MAC, Machinery Advisors Consortium. I'm one of 13 advisors in that group, and we coach dealers to peak performance in the off-highway business. We've got peer groups. We've got 59 corporations with over 400 storefronts that we coach in a peer group environment. And we also do leadership training and also developmental training for that senior member. So there's a gap between that 26 and 45-year-old. I saw a gap. So last summer, I worked with one of my colleagues, Cam Canfield in Ohio, with the Strativation Group to develop a leadership academy. And either of those two quick reference codes will take you to the website of MAC, the website of the academy. And that's a group of modules that in a library that will help people develop their leadership skills, both hard and soft leadership skills that are necessary. Once developed, I said, hey, why not share it? So on the far left, you'll see the Strativation University, which is really for 19 and 24-year-olds. So I've developed the same program, the same curriculum that I work with university students across 21 universities. Most of those students have been historically 4-H members, FFA members, or AFA members as they move through their development into the career. So those are the four platforms that I work on. I enjoy working with industry friends and alliances that we've made with groups like Strativation.
All right, so Russ and I are going to kind of dive into these different topics as we outlined in the agenda. That first one is focusing on the competition, right? And so we'll talk about, how can you better understand your competitive landscape that you're facing today? We've got here competitive pressure, because sometimes that landscape at times does feel like pressure. And I'm sure for a lot of you today, you're feeling that. Russ, I know probably with the dealerships that you're working with, you're hearing that as well in the marketplace today. And so we want to talk about three different key topics as we talk about striving to be the best in class from an operational excellence standpoint. And so we've got people, processes, and technology. And Russ, feel free here to jump in as we talk about this.
I try and make things as simple as possible. And in every business, when we talk about competition, you're all in the same landscape. You're all confronting the same headwinds. You're all confronting the same drive for market share or profitability or recruitment, retention, and rewarding of employees. But you can put your business, I think, in three circles. And we oftentimes show this as a Venn diagram where your people, you have your people you're working with, your processes that you deploy, and then technology. And you need to invest in your people so that you have the capacity to grow, because if you're not growing, you're standing still, you're probably moving backwards. In processes, you need to audit your processes and adapt those processes with automation for efficiency. So are your processes right for your organization and are capable of moving you forward? And then technology. There's a lot of noise around technology, and we're going to discuss AI and other innovations. But every business will grow at the speed that they leverage their leadership and their technology. And we say we leverage technology with your people for innovation, and you leverage technology with your processes for automation. So how are you automating processes? Maybe the process is a satisfied process, where you want to know more about the feelings of your client customers, the feelings of your employees. So you deploy those types of technologies that are going to give you that feedback. So we talk in our groups about leveraging leadership, communication, and collaboration, making you the adaptive force.
Yeah, and I think these are great things to focus in on. A lot of you are in the process of what goal planning, strategizing as we're coming to the end of 2024 and looking ahead to 2025. And, what initiatives I think have you guys put in place that focus in on each one of these, key areas that Russ just talked about? I'm going to kind of move in here to the next section. Did I skip ahead, Russ, too far? Feel like, oh no, I think we were talking about this first, and then we'll go into the next slide. I'm trying to remember from our meeting yesterday as we were preparing for today's session. There's been a lot of changes in our landscape, especially as we talk about the employee component and the competition we face when it comes to, recruiting challenges, especially on the technician side. That seems to be something we cannot seem to solve or get away from. But one thing that's really interesting is we're now, in a place where we have 4 to maybe 5 generations working at a dealership today. And what's interesting is when we measure the engagement scores across these different generations, there's vast differences. Maybe to level set a little bit for you is these scores here we're looking at in this bar chart are net promoter scores for employee net promoter score. So your employees are asked the question of how likely it is that they would recommend this dealership as a place to work. Now, from a benchmarking standpoint, typically a 20 or above net promoter score is considered to be best in class. That's significantly lower than what we're used to seeing on the customer side. The dealerships we work with have a vast range. Some of them have been doing this on a more consistent basis and have increased those scores over time to where we see NPS for employee engagement to be 50. But there's some that are quite low because this scale does range from negative 100 to a positive 100. And so, we have some that are down at negative 30. The average or benchmark is around a 16, and that varies based on dealership size, which is interesting. So based on the number of locations, but as you can see, it also varies pretty significantly based on the generation of the employee. So our baby boomers, which often tends to be maybe leadership in the organization who have more tenure, have a 43 NPS. And they're currently making up about 14% of the workforce in the organization. Our Gen Xers are a little bit less engaged, but still pretty well engaged when we look at that benchmark of being 20 or above, are at a 33 NPS. They do make up a significant amount, like 30% of the workforce. Our millennials are actually making up the majority of our workforce today at 40%. And their net promoter score is a 20. But when we get down to our youngest generation, the newest generation entering the workforce, they are at a 7 NPS, so not very engaged. They currently are making up about 15% of the workforce, but that number is going to be growing, especially maybe as we start to see some of our baby boomer generation start to retire and fall off. And as we have more openings, those are probably more likely to be filled with some of the Gen Z. So I think it's important that we're meeting the expectations of these different generations. They are vastly different. And I think we talk a little bit about that in our benchmark report here. The QR code on the right-hand side of your screen allows you the ability to download more information as to what we're seeing in the industry as it relates to both employee and customer experience. But this specifically, you can dive into a little bit more there if you scan that.
If I could comment to this, I
Yeah.
love graphs, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. Here's a picture. And what this picture tells me, and what I take away from Emily's work here, is that the longer you're in the workforce, you find your place and you become more satisfied. And I think that as leaders, what we need to address as we're looking at transformational opportunities for the young workforce coming in is how do we make them more satisfied earlier? As Emily said, this graph has both a positive and a negative side. And all of the outcome here, even with the Gen Z group, the latest group to enter the workforce, it's still positive. Their net score is a positive score, but it simply grows greater the longer that they're in the workforce and they themselves find their place and find the company, which is their society expectations and their own capacities. So we use this constantly in some of our feedback as well. And we're going to talk about how that generational change can be impacted by you as a leader.
Apologize, everyone. 1 second. I think my screen stopped sharing for a second. Can you? Russ, can you see that again, since you're the only one unmuted?
We're back. We're good. Thank you.
We're back.
That's good.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry to interrupt
Right,
you there.
these are
Go
my
ahead.
words, so maybe I'll start and let Emily comment to it. But as a leader, your role is to identify values and identify the future leaders. And here's a generalizations about Gen Zs. And this is the group that's just entering work. They value collaboration and they have a skill set with digital tools. I constantly use the reference at baptism. Today, our young children get a cell phone at baptism. I received mine when I was 39 years old, and they know how to use it. They seek the stability and growth in their operations, and they have boundaries. They have boundaries around their work and their life, and they want to set those boundaries and respect them. Now, the next generation up, the parents of Gen Z, the millennials, they're a little bit more flexible. They want purpose-driven work. They want to see a purpose for what they do, but they also want a chance to change it and use their expertise and their skill set to change the work around them. A little bit more apt to blend their personal life with their professional lives. An example I'll use that just because you have a Christmas party, don't expect everybody to show up. The Gen Z group maybe identifying their work life around their family and want to spend their time with family and friends, whereas the millennials, they're a little more apt to blend that personal life and want to share that within the colleagues of their workforce. But neither is bad. They're just different. They're just different.
Yeah, each one of those generations is different. I mean, even Russ and I, right, have different perspectives and come from different generations. And I think understanding what makes each one of those employees sort of tick, what their needs are to better meet those are different. And as we work together, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to learn from one another. And it goes both ways. And I think there's a lot of opportunity within the organization to collaborate where, our Gen Zs can teach us a lot, maybe about that cell phone and technology that we're not as up to date on. But there's also a lot of values, I think, that we as Gen Xers and baby boomers can share with those millennials and Gen Z as well.
How many times do we use the term, Emily, about think outside the box? Well,
Yeah.
here's an example of boxes. You got your baby boomer box, you got your Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. Those are the boxes. And until you step into their box and understand their values and understand their work ethic, you can't really find ways to bring them into the team and get the greatest value from them. So this is a good example of not out of the box thinking, but out of the box acting.
Yeah, exactly. You can rely on team members to do it as well. Yeah. So Russ shared a few examples with you as we were talking about, what he has seen or heard from some of the dealers that he works with, and obviously the data that we've collected. I find that oftentimes you all like to hear from one another, right? How are people actually applying some of these strategies that we are talking about here with you today to actually drive results? And so I always like to share some sort of best practices with you. If you scan the QR code here on the screen, there's actually an interview with Rob Durham at Lakeside, and he has an interesting role where he oversees both HR and marketing. And so I think a unique perspective where he is able to bring together the employee engagement piece, they had some real dissatisfaction amongst their employees, and they were trying to leverage that, right? How could they improve that to be able to attract more people to their business? And so Rob shares a bit about how specifically he has been able to do that, and setting some real measurable goals. I think as we're in that season, this time of year, this is a great opportunity to maybe use some examples as how you could potentially do that with and become more competitive, right, in your marketplace today. All right, so let's talk about maybe some um, adaptation. So how can we adapt to the industry changes that we are facing currently? So we're going to talk a little bit about today. We can talk about today's market. I think most of us are in an area of concern or constraint at the moment, where we're not quite sure, how things are looking in the future, a bit of a downturn. How long is this going to last and need to sort of wait out? I think some of the top challenges we're facing is selling in today's market. We've come off of quite a boom the last few years, and I think people are concerned around, at least I hear from the dealers that we work with their salespeople specifically. Sales personnel have been in sort of order takers, right, for recent years. And, how are we going to continue to sell in now what is a buyer's market? Um, and so I think that's something that has a lot of people concerned. Obviously, when things are in a contractual period, there's tends to be more focus on used equipment. I think also the aftermarket area of the business. I don't know, Russ, if you can attest to this, but gets a lot of focus because we rely heavily on that aftermarket parts and service to be able to sustain and support things when sales may be a bit slower.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. So anybody that's been in the market, the market we're talking about is the off-highway market, whether it's agricultural, industrial construction. They've seen a cycle, and we're coming off of a cycle, particularly on the ag side, where it's been a seller's market. If you had it, you could sell it, and you probably could sell it at list or above list price, and you were driving the game. And in the last 18 months, it certainly has changed into a buyer's market, where the buyers can now make their selection and choices. Um, the durability, longevity, quality of our equipment is longer. So the duty cycles, a 6-year-old piece of machinery today can be upgraded with product upgrades, and most OEMs are paying attention to that market as well. But our market is, and many would say, we're not selling new equipment, we're buying used equipment. And we have to have the capacity to find that second and third and fourth buyer for that equipment. And the markets are not regional, they're national. With today's digitization, you can find a piece of equipment from Oklahoma to Maine. And then the clients are not afraid of investigating and understanding the equipment from that distance. So the equipment outlook is today, inventory control and management and turnover are paramount with the general management of our dealerships, whether they're ag or construction. And the way they buy their used equipment, have a market for the used equipment is quite important. Then the talent challenges are, I just came off of a call with a dealer who said I would hire 15 technicians if I found them tomorrow. So the most profitable piece of the business is the service piece of the business. The second most profitable is the parts, and the least profitable is the whole goods. So dealers today have an abundance. If you're holding your machinery longer and you're not buying new, and you're putting a duty cycle to your used, uh, you're putting to work. A combine, if it goes 3,000 acres last year, it's going to go 3,000 acres this year and 3,000 more next year. And the wear and the requirements of that product to consume parts and require service and maintenance and preparation are all there. So the the successful dealer tomorrow, and we call them second machine age dealers. The first machine age was industrialization. The second machine age is digitization. And if you're in connectivity with your equipment and your client's equipment, you know what it needs, and you bring that attention to the owner of the equipment, and they want to make sure it's working at a top serviceability that takes parts and technicians to do that. And we're at a shortage. AED, the Associated Equipment Distributors, will have a program in place to identify the increased requirement for personnel in the technical fields. Fortunately, this new generation, the Z generation, and by the way, the next generation is going to call Alpha. But the Z generation is oftentimes referred to it as the work belt generation. They may not go to a 4-year college. They may go to the institution's 2-year preparation and be ready to be a wage earner at an earlier time than what we've seen before. But the challenge of finding, recruiting, training, rewarding, and retaining technicians is top of mind with most of our clients.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think you hit some key things there with the talent component is that, obviously everyone wants to go hire more and they don't have enough, but don't lose focus on retaining those that you have. We don't want that number to grow from 15 to 20 because you lose 5 more either. So I think both of those things require a lot of focus. And at the same time, as you mentioned, right, we've got this new generation coming up that may sort of change everything from what we have known for quite some time, where, they may not look at going to 4-year colleges. And, what are you doing now to recruit those kids that are in middle school and high school and start to gain their attention towards your organization and towards our industry? And I think that's a real collaborative effort between industry partners like us and associations and the dealerships and manufacturers as well. But I think we have a real potential opportunity to maybe address this long-standing challenge we've all been facing.
Yeah, can't start early enough. We need to demonstrate the rewards of our industry at a very early age. In agriculture, we have characteristics to do that, whether it's with 6 million young people in the 4-H, 1 million young people in the FFA, and then the collegiate arm of the AFA. There's those organizations that are there. What we have to do, it's like fishing. You don't go salmon fishing in a pond. You don't go bass fishing in a stream. You know where to look and where to fish, where to find them, where to catch them.
Yep, exactly. All right. So our the one of the biggest changes I think we are all facing, and I keep hearing this, that technology is changing faster than it ever has, but it will never change as slow as it is today either, right? So it's going to continue to increase the pace in which we are faced with new technology advances. And I think we're all being hit at this from different directions, from the equipment to the processes and tools we work with to the people. And obviously the first one we have on here is AI, which seems to be the hot topic of conversation everywhere we go, whether you're at a conference or association event. And I think Russ is even going to be talking about that coming up at one of our next events at AED in January, right?
Yeah, I'm far from an expert, but I'm certainly a spectator. And AI, I don't like the term. First of all, I don't like the term artificial intelligence because there's nothing artificial about it. It's automated. When I was a young man or a student and trying to create a report, uh, I had Encyclopedia Americana on a shelf behind me, and I'd go to the right issue, I'd go to the right alphabet if I could alphabetize, and I'd pick off an article, or I'd pick off the information that was available in that encyclopedia for me to create my learning. Well, today it's not material, it's digital, and on our phones and through what I call automated intelligence, we scrape the entire interview or the entire universe of information, and it's available at our fingertips. So ask a question, get the answer. But I've researched some studies that have been done by different companies, and one of them in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, talks about human first automation. And what that means is the quality of the outcome is going to be equal to the quality of the question. So you need to know how to ask the right question. If you're a technician and you've been confronted with an old red tractor and you're being asked to replace the torque amplifier, the TA, in a red tractor, and you've never done that before. You can use automated intelligence not only to find the technique for doing it, the operator's manual or maintenance manual or machinery manual where that technique can be identified. You know the part numbers that you need, and you might even be able to source a video that will show you how to change that torque that TA in the tractor. So that's all consolidated, and innovation is about speed and accuracy. And so anything we can employ that would give us better speed or better accuracy, it would only make common sense that we'd use it. And when I'm talking about technology, where I bring that into reality for our baby boomer group that I'm in, I talk to the golfers and say, who has in their bag the same driver that you used 10 years ago? And I'll guarantee you, you cannot find a wood persimmon drive in anybody's bag. They have a driver that has been new technology and it's new aerodynamics and the swing speed. Now they don't maybe know how to use it. So when they hit it bad, it's real bad. But that technology that they have in their golf bag is a different technology. So we have everybody from don't care, don't know, to those that are using it in a power manner. And the dealers of the future are going to embrace it, and their employees are already embracing it.
Completely agree. I think we're seeing the manufacturers embrace it heavily, right, on that technician side, and starting to try to ease some of the, efforts and looking things up and make things be faster, right, more efficient for our team members. But I think there's a lot of ways today as individuals we can start to leverage this technology in our day-to-day lives, from communications, and as you said, I think the human aspect of it is super important. I listened to an interesting session earlier this year talking about, how to drive some of those inputs to where the AI gets to know you as a person, right? And then it can drive better outputs that are more reflective of you. So in the communications that you may be, leveraging AI for, and the importance on that prompt, sometimes we forget about it because I think we use it a lot like a search engine, because that's what we're used to for so long. And similar yet different. And so I think there's definitely ways where we can start to leverage this technology to, ease some of the things that we maybe find burdensome to our day-to-day jobs, right? To allow us to leverage this technology. I think it'll make us more efficient. And I think there's a lot of automations, as Russ mentioned, that can help these processes, right? We're always deploying new technology, right, in our dealerships today. And so I think there's a lot of ways in which we can leverage this for, information sharing as well as training purposes. So there's a lot of advantages to this technology. So maybe don't run from it, but try to embrace the change as it comes, because it is coming quickly.
But it's a mindset. You need to be open-minded to every idea, to every suggestion, and every tool, and move yourself up. Introduce curiosity to your skill set, and you've got to be curious. And like I said, being open-minded, because the speed of which we change with technology is, as you said earlier, is vast. But the younger workforce has probably been introduced to it, and they are sharing it at a greater speed than we are as baby boomers and the Gen X's. Even my children are amazed at the things that their children bring home from techniques used by other students.
Yes, definitely.
All right, this is one that I shared with friend Stacy Anthony. Stacy had a really unique circumstance in that he's not multiple generational, and in fact, to the contrary, not only is Stacy starting a new business, but he's starting a new brand and introducing a new product brand. So he has some specific needs and what we did at the Strativation Leadership Academy, which is a segment of Mac. It's one of the member companies within Mac. We organized not a one and done, but a series of education for his sales force that started with virtual work, and they were introduced to some concepts virtually on the front side before they ever came to a day and a half workshop where they could share that work together. And then after the workshop, one of the things we do is we simply check the box and say, hey, well, I've been to training. I obviously know that. Well, it's not true. What really needs to happen post the training is coaching and implementation. So we follow up the training with a virtual discussion 90 days later, find out how they're applying that work, and then another session, another 30 days later. So there's a continuum that you will forget what you were trained, and a forgetting curve. 3 months after training, you'll only retain 20 to 30% of the knowledge. But if it's repeated and it's coached, the retention level is improved. So we're finding through, and this QR will take you to a testimonial from Stacy and talk about the modules and the work. And it's unique in that not every business needs the same set of skills, technical or soft. So the work that could be done, Stacy customized the work that he needed around selling and around the sales technique and the closure technique and the customer satisfaction technique. And that's what was customized into his piece for AgRev.
All right, so how do we become this preferred dealer of choice, both as it relates to employees and customers? And we're going to talk about them in two different segments. So becoming the employer of choice is really what our focus is here on this slide. And these, I think, are some great takeaways as we've talked about some of the competition we're facing in today's marketplaces, engaging all generations of your workforce, meeting the needs of each one of those generations, understanding what drives each one of them, and bringing them together. We've talked about a couple different examples of how you could collaborate, like with technology, in bringing those different generations together. A couple other things is we'll see this with the younger generations, especially is our older generation tends to be a little bit more resistant to feedback. Maybe they're not as open to the idea of hearing feedback, but the younger generation wants it, and they also want it way more frequently. So I think historically we're used to, in some of these our generations, Russ and I can relate to this, an annual review process, right? You got to wait 12 months to hear feedback about something that happened, maybe in the first quarter of the year. That doesn't really work with today's Gen Z and millennials. They want that feedback to be instantaneous. It's what they're used to. That's what they've grown up with. We're going to see this with the incoming generation as well with the alpha. It's pretty instant gratification there. And then recognition and rewards. I think those things are both key to driving retention, as well as attracting top talent. I think we'll need to make sure that we're making sure, again, that the recognition and rewards that we're providing align with the values. And some of those things can be pretty significantly different when it comes to the different generations. In that slide earlier, we talked about, the difference with the Gen Z and the millennials and what it is that they're looking for. And so, their rewards are going to be pretty different than what like a baby boomer may like to see when it comes to their recognition and rewards. And this team-based approach, I know I've mentioned it even just here in this conversation, talking about bullet points, one with engaging the generations, but I think that's really, really important, especially getting those more cross-functional teams where we're mixing up people from different roles, different generations, maybe different locations, et cetera, and sort of bringing them together in this collaborative way. Russ, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I think the picture really says it all. You notice that the figures on the left coming to the idea are not working individually. They're holding hands. And I think that in the engagement, the highest compliment you can pay anybody is ask them for their opinion. And usually the people that are going to solve a problem are the ones that are closest to the problem. So by engaging your entire workforce in a teamed approach to decision making is key. And you're right about the performance reviews. They want feedback almost instantaneously, the same way they want their food. They want to drive through and have fast food. They don't want to drive through and they want to have fast feedback. And it needs to be continual. And it's kind of uncomfortable for the baby boomer generation. And for my generation, it was just because, they'd ask, well, why
Mhm.
are we doing it this way? Well, the most tired and caustic phrase to a Gen Z is, well, we've always done it that way. And we forget about change, and we forget about the way things have been digitized, and we forget about the speed. And again, automation and innovation is about speed and accuracy. So turn it loose, work faster, work more accurately, be more collaborative, get that feedback quickly, so you're not staying in the same direction when it's the wrong direction. And the people that are close to those problems are going to see that indirection quickly, and they're going to say, "Hey, let's think about this. Well, how have we ever thought about changing our process or changing?" And they're going to find ways to automate and make your processes more efficient, and the morale of the organization just explodes when you ask them questions and follow up with another question and then a third question. And they look forward to being challenged to be part of the group. And then the performance review is not me telling you what I wanted you to do. It's you feeding back to me how successful you were on what you designed into your performance, because you designed what you would thought were important, how you were going to do it, when you were going to do it, and now you're just meeting that commitment. So again, communication's key. Communication is key. Open-mindedness is key, and quality questions.
Couldn't agree more. So let's talk about this dealer of choice when it comes to customer. So obviously in today's competitive landscape, and the market that we're currently facing, this is going to be key, right? You've got to somehow differentiate yourself. And, we suggest, right? I think one of the things that we're seeing more and more today, even outside of our industry, and I think we tend to be a bit of a lagger industry, and which is great in the sense that we can learn from others, right? So we can look at what's happening, to us, even as consumers in our marketplaces, and understand what may be driving our experiences to go back to a business and become loyal there. Is we're seeing a lot of personalization over and over again. And that's becoming much easier with technology, like tools like AI, to be able to do that. So, how can we sort of tailor these experiences to meet the needs of our customers and make them much more personalized? And part of that, too, is this account based marketing approach. So, if we have marketing people on this call today or leaders that are here listening, I think this is be an important approach for your marketing team to take to make sure again that things are being tailored to, those businesses that you are going out after. And some of our dealers are getting much more diverse in the products that they're selling, especially as we see more mergers and acquisitions, and our maybe some of these dealerships are expanding and growing. They're serving different markets. One location could be significantly different than another, and making sure that we're not doing sort of this mass marketing approach, but how can we make that more specific? Um, and I'll let Russ talk a little bit about this too, because he's got some great examples to share, but empowering those frontline employees. So obviously we just talked about keeping them engaged, which is going to be key, right? Those happy employees are going to provide much better experiences to those customers. And they're the ones that are out there having these conversations and interacting with them. And so make sure that they feel empowered to be able to make the decisions and have the right conversations and provide the service that's needed for the customers.
Yeah, my color commentary to this would be, I grew up under the term that the customer was king,
Mhm.
and you
Always right.
happy customer is going to be a loyal customer, and
Yeah.
that's being challenged today because uh, just because you satisfy your customer, there could be someone else that could equally satisfy that customer. So we flip this at Mac. We talk about being the employer of choice and having happy employees, and that the employee, and particularly in this competitive marketplace for technicians or other line employees, that you want to become the employer of choice. And if you're the employer of choice and your associates are happy, they're going to make your customers happy. And A customer that's happy with you is going to give you a get out of jail free card. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to have a product that doesn't work as advertised. You're going to have a part that doesn't get delivered at this timing, a service work that goes the extra day that you planned on. But if your customers are happy with you, they're going to look beyond that, and they're going to come back. You go back to the places that made you happy. I mean, that's just a natural instinct. And this notion of account-based marketing is not that difficult. And you mentioned it. In the past, we did mass marketing. If you were a salesman, you heard something about the sales funnel, and you put customers into that funnel, attracting them through your marketing techniques, and then you drove them down to the point of a decision and a sale. Well, account-based marketing turns that upside down and recognizes that each of your customers are uniquely different, and you qualify the uniqueness of those differences through your CRM, your customer relationship, and your salespeople. The closer they are to the knowledge of the customer and what they value, with what their experiences are, so you treat each account based on their values and their differences, and then you build your approach with a marketing approach that goes to pre-purchase, at purchase, and post-purchase. So you have happy customers that build advocates for you. And account-based marketing builds an advocate customer as opposed to a client. And there's a difference. And we've already mentioned the frontline employees. The closer to the problem, closer to the solution, more apt to deploy it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of at our time limit here, so I want to make sure we've got an opportunity to address questions. Russ and I probably could go on and on about these topics as we engage with so many of you dealers and hear some great stories that we want to share with each one of you. But I want to make sure we have an opportunity. So Michelle, if there's any questions that have come in, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. We do have a couple questions. The first one is, what strategies can help integrate new employees quickly into a dealership's culture and operations?
Russ, you or me? Yeah.
All right. I'll jump. New employees should be assigned a mentor, or maybe call it an advocate to begin with. But typically well-orchestrated organizations have an onboarding process and maybe a manual that it indicates the policies and practices of the job. Even more sophisticated might have videos that lead a person through a trained, say, a 6 to 9 month cycle as they're onboarded. But the important thing, I think, is to find the social leaders in your organization. And a social leader is different than an appointed leader. The social leader is the one that everybody goes to say, what did the boss mean when he said that? And that social leader unpackages that reality. So assigning new hires and new employees with a coach or mentor, and the techniques are kind of different, but to have someone they can go to that can personalize the answer and personalize the message will help accelerate the new employees' engagement in the business and the engagement with their job, and it gives them an anchor point so they don't feel like they're isolated.
Great, thank you, Russ. And then one more, what are warning signs of disengagement and how can leaders address these before it's too late?
Yeah, I think that's a key point. Obviously, we encourage to ask for feedback often, right? So kind of these pulsely check-ins. So it doesn't get to that point where you've lost people, where they're beyond that sort of point of engagement. They're beyond even disengaged and maybe, actively looking for work elsewhere, as an example. And that can sort of bring down the entire team when it gets to that point. So obviously you've got people that may not be participating in much. You can look at the experiences that they're providing to their customers to see for those sort of warning signs. I think we also need to realize too with these generations that there's more blend between personal and work. Before, I think, we were very much used to that. It was very like on, off, cut, dry. And you didn't bring your personal life into your work life. You didn't bring work home, etc. And those things are very different. So the questions that we may need to have too are a bit more open and transparent in those conversations. So typically things maybe you wouldn't have talked about before are open on that table for discussion too. So just kind of having a different lens as we're approaching different employees.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that was it. What's all the questions we had? Thank you everyone for joining us. In the next few days, you will all receive the recordings in your inbox, as well as the presentation. If you have any questions, please reach out. I think, Emily, if you hit the next slide, you'll have.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll also be at the AED Summit coming up in a couple months. So please visit us and say hi there. And then if you'd like to follow up with Emily or Russ, here's their contact info. We'd love to keep the conversation going, so please reach out. And hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.